In this video, you'll learn how to use the Coil Cutter Deluxe from PotterUSA. The Coil Cutter Deluxe includes the body with a powder-coated base, the table, ramp, motor and motor housing, removable left and right guides, a coolant reservoir, coolant concentrate, and an empty squeeze bottle for mixing the coolant solution, an 1/8 inch hex key, a 5/32 inch hex key, an 8mm wrench, and an arbor key. The Coil Cutter Deluxe also comes with a blade, which is under this portion of the table here. Make sure the power switch is in the off position before plugging in the power cord. Plug the power cord into a grounded wall outlet. And now you're ready to mix your coolant solution. Mix the coolant solution by adding a few drops of the coolant concentrate to the empty squeeze bottle and adding water. The solution should be mixed at a ratio of approximately 10 parts water to 1 part coolant concentrate. Very little coolant is needed at one time, so mix a small amount. Just a few drops of coolant concentrate is necessary. Then you can just add water. Again, the ratio is approximately 10 parts water to 1 part coolant concentrate, but you don't have to be incredibly exact with this. And then once you've added your water, you can just put the lid back on the mixing bottle and shake the solution until the mixture is mixed. It should look sort of a milky white color when you're finished mixing. Fill the coolant reservoir with coolant solution. The level of the coolant solution should be high enough that it comes into contact with the blade and maintains contact with the blade while running. The blade should never be run without the coolant reservoir in place, as it acts as a bottom blade guard. You can also use the squeeze bottle to remove excess coolant when you're done operating the saw, as it will evaporate if left in the coolant reservoir. Simply suck it back into the squeeze bottle and save for later use. Next, you're ready to set the blade height. In this portion of the video, I've removed the left guide so that you can see what I'm doing, but that's not necessary for you when setting the height of the blade. You want to make sure that your blade can freely cut through the bottom of your coil, but you also want to make sure that the blade is not so exposed that it will also cut through the top of your coil. You may need to move the right guide out of the way in order to access the table adjustment bolts. Slide the guide out of the way so that you can fit the 8mm wrench onto the nuts for adjusting the table. Loosen the table adjustment nuts. Then the table can swivel up or down to change the height of the blade. See how when you swivel it up and down, more or less of the blade is exposed? The blade should extend high enough that it can cut through the bottom of your coil, but again, not so high that it also cuts through the top. Use your coil to show you how high the blade needs to be, and then tighten back up the table adjustment bolts with the 8mm wrench. Next, you're ready to adjust the guides. Adjust the right and left guides to fit the coil you'll be cutting. This can be done with the 1/8 inch hex key. Loosen the screws, slide the guides into position, and then retighten the screws. The coil that you're using should fit snugly in between the guides, but should also be able to slide freely through them. As you can see, you can adjust the guides to fit several different sizes of coils. If you're cutting incredibly large coils, you can also remove the guides completely. Take note that the guides are cut at an angle towards the table so that they hold on to the coil and keep it from riding up the blade when cutting. See how the coil moves freely between the guides? That's what you're looking for. Once the guides and blade height are set, the Coil Cutter Deluxe is ready for use. We recommend using the coil cutter on the highest speed for non-ferrous metals and on a lower speed for harder materials. Adjust the speed and then power the machine on. Before beginning to cut a coil, make sure any tails or sharp edges are trimmed off the ends of the coil. When the blade comes into contact with the coil at the start of the cut, there is a slight kickback, and this can cause the tail to possibly push back into your fingers, which can be painful or possibly cut the skin. In order to avoid this, remove those tails before beginning to use the saw. Hold the coil firmly and flat on the table while feeding it through the guides toward the blade. You may want to place a receptacle under the ramp so that parts can fall into your receptacle. The coolant reservoir acts as a bottom blade guard. Never run the blade without the coolant reservoir in place. Use a wooden push stick for shorter coils or to remove cut pieces from between the guides and saw blade, or when your hands are close to the blade. The Coil Cutter Deluxe is recommended for gauges between 22 and 8 gauge material. We recommend non-ferrous metals like copper, brass, silver, gold, etc. Do not use excessive force when pushing coils through the blade. Turn off the machine and wait until the blade comes to a complete stop before removing any jump rings from the table. The Coil Cutter Deluxe was designed to quickly and efficiently cut large quantities of jump rings in a variety of metals and sizes. While its primary use is for cutting jump rings, the Coil Cutter Deluxe can have other uses, including the following. Cut small lengths of sheet metal by removing the right and left guides. Or use the guide as a fence to cut a length of sheet. Use the blade to cut through ring shanks for resizing. Use the saw to cut off tabs from pancake die stampings, but straight lines only. This saw is not meant for curved cuts. You can also use the saw to cut multiple pieces of metal to the same length by using the right guide as a stop. Enjoy using your coil cutter, and as always, for more information, visit PotterUSA.com.